And it's not only the views, it's the dreadful horse-brassy pubs run by rude, jumped-up shopkeepers in blazers and cravats, and it's the bloody regulars. The backbone of England and his lady wife, Mrs. Backbone of Neck-of-the-Woods. They invariably make the same entrance wherever they go. I presume they're rehearsing it as children. Then Mr. Backbone says. And Mrs. Backbone says. Then Mr. Backbone says.
What'll you have, darling?
And Mrs. Backbone says.
Oh, yes, let's see. What shall I have?
So Mr. Backbone says.
Why don't you have a whiskey mac?
And Mrs. Backbone says.
Yes, why don't I have a whiskey mac?
Good idea.
Good idea, darling. Yes, I'll have a whiskey mac. What are you going to have, darling?
Ask Mrs. Backbone.
Oh, I'm not sure, darling. I know.
Says Mr. Backbone.
I think I'll have a nice bottle of Guinness.
There. Then when Mr. Backbone dips into his pocket for change, he drops a coin on the floor. And quick as a flash, the barmaid says...
Leave it for the sweeper.
Pause for laughter. Then, when the drinks have been savoured by our resident Bisto kids... The Backbones of England smile knowingly at one another, and Mr. Backbone says to the barmaid...
Is it Christmas?
And the barmaid says...
Ooh, terrible. Packed all the time we were.
Well,
says Mr. Backbone.
That's over for another year anyway.
And Mrs. Backbone, her nose dripping in unison with his, decides it's time for her to scintillate.
Yes, all over for another year.
You can say that again, darling.
Says Mr. Backbone, nodding approvingly at a horse brass, and does so.
All over for another year.
I know deep down they're going to continue to plunder the calendar, and I should leave now, but I don't. I just wait for it as Mr. Backbone rubs his hands together and says to the still life with pineapple ice bucket.
How was New Year then?
New Year?
Squawks the barmaid.
Don't talk about it.
Mr. Backbone does.
Oh, like that, was it?
And Mrs. Backbone echoes.
Like that, eh?
To which he adds saucily to Mr. Backbone.
Ours was pretty hectic too, wasn't it, darling?
Always is.
Says Mrs. Backbone.
Still, you expect it, don't you?
Wouldn't be New Year if it wasn't, would it,
Says
darling?
Mrs. Backbone, and I drink up and leave before they embark on their forecast for Easter. I do have one unfulfilled ambition as regards the country, though. I once remarked to Fred Winter on how healthy his horses looked.
That's because they don't stay up all night playing cards and drinking vodka.
It occurred to me to wonder what would happen. Just what would happen if you fed into the average farm animal what some of us consume in the course of a single day. I would very much like to wake up one morning with a cow of the Frisian variety and walk her down here to the coach and horses, stopping on the way to buy 20 players. Ply her with vodkas until closing time, whip her off to an Indian restaurant, take her up to the Colony Room till 5:30, then on to the York Minster, Swiss Tavern and 3 greyhounds. Get beaten up by Chinese waiters at midnight, have a row with a taxi driver, set the bed on fire, put it out with tears, and wake up on the floor. Could you then milk said cow? I doubt it.
You seem to be enjoying doing that on that extract, and the night I went, you seemed to enjoy it a lot. Was just the delight of the script what tempted you into this enormous part?
Oh, yes. The first consideration was Keith's extraordinary quality as a dramatist, one of his many disciplines, and he'd written what I thought was a beautifully tailored piece of I remember Noel Coward saying years ago that he could write dialogue by the yard, but it was plots. Well, so Keith had this extraordinary idea of taking a great deal of Geoffrey's dialogue as he writes it in The Spectator and incorporating it into a simple little playlet. It was vastly entertaining.
One of the extraordinary things about it is that it presents a new sort of drunk, really. Drunks are usually clowns, or they're alcoholically obsessed, and that's tied in with other obsessions, and they're tragic figures. But this drunk is elegant and witty and funny, on top of things and in control. And Geoffrey, when you meet him, is very like that, although he does drink a lot. I wouldn't describe him as drunk, he's a heavy drinker. Did you enjoy actually playing that? Do you find that sympathetic?
I would describe Geoffrey as a heavy drunk.
A heavy drunk? I'm trying to be polite.
Hang on, I find myself very fond of saying there's not a baby born, a body buried, a head crowned, a ship launched, a deal struck and not tied without there being a bottle of liquid light cracked open. So it's woven deeply into our human condition. I read a piece by William Deeds the other day in the Telegraph extolling the virtues of getting slightly pissed. There's another view of booze. I mean, we drink each other's health, even as we publish statistics about how the mortality rate of alcoholism is creeping in. We have a wonderfully ambivalent attitude, but it's our chosen euphoria-inducing drug.
Did you find that you had to pace the performance in accordance with the way people expected you to react to the amount you were drinking? There's a steady intake of vodka going on through the night.
Initially, at first, it was simply chaos. One just went stumbling around the stage, stuffing fags into the gob and pouring vodkas practically indiscriminately. I mean, it was just very difficult. And as we were editing the play, as we went along on tour, it became even more confusing. So what I used to do was just drink everything in sight. Water, anything. I just kept on popping fags into my mouth all the time.
What about Geoffrey, who's an extraordinary man himself? Did you have a lot of chats with him? Did you take from him? I mean, you're supposed to be playing him.
Geoffrey and I go back to the later 50s. We were easy chums on the few occasions we met. We even had a rivalry once over a woman. I lost. He's never forgiven me. This is our joke.
Not a bad joke, really.
I asked Jeff which hand he held the glass in, and he showed me that it was the right, and he has developed amazing muscles. He's not too far away. Holds it rather puffily. And his fag is held about here. So there's not a great deal of distance to travel.
Well, like chopsticks.
Well, he was adamant about which hand should be holding what. So I tried that for 3 days, and it was hopeless. My arms are nearly falling off. So I've broken the rule. And we agreed that an impersonation would be silly. I'm sure the play will go on with other actors, for it is good. The material is excellent. So impersonation was daft.
C. Thank you very much.